According to a survey done by the National Payroll Institute of Canada, nearly 1 in 3 people earning over 100,000 are living paycheck to paycheck. And here's the thing, even for those who are saving and investing, a lot of them are making huge mistakes that could force them to delay their retirement. A paper was written by the Financial Planning Association, found that wealthier individuals indicated higher levels of subjective knowledge but were no less likely to have made investment mistakes due to emotions, suggesting the high net worth cohort displayed overconfidence in their abilities. And this overconfidence has been found to lead to behaviors such as investing more in concentrated portfolios and stock picking. But when we look at the evidence of how these strategies work, it actually turns into something more similar to gambling than investing. It dramatically increases your risk without actually increasing your odds of even getting an average return on investment. This is what we call uncompensated risk. Now, look, I'm all for taking risks. Like, I started my own financial planning firm at just 26 years old, but there's a huge difference in taking risk. There's a real likelihood of success versus taking risk without a clear or proven benefit. Intelligent investors do not take risk just for the sake of risk. S&P Global runs a study every year, and over the 10-year period, less than 2% of all professional fund managers in Canada beat the S&P TSX, and only 14% of US fund managers beat the S&P 500 over 10 years. According to S&P Global, these results are consistent with completely random outcomes. Essentially, there's no proof that the ones that outperformed did so because they had skill, and there is no evidence they will continue to outperform. And these are people who do this full time. This is their entire job. They have teams, they have research, they have Bloomberg terminals. They're flying private out to the sites of the places they're investing in, and less than 14 out of every 100 beat the index. And the ones that do rarely continue to beat it over consecutive years. So if the pros can't do it predictably, what do you think the odds are that you're going to pick your way to market-beating returns as a side hustle between work and putting the kids to bed, right? Like, that's why they call it a gamble. At the end of the day, here's what I want you to take away. 6 figures is a great income, but investing in the stock market without a clear framework and just throwing your money in popular stocks is not an investment strategy. I'm Sam Lichtman, founder of Millen Wealth, and today I'm going to walk you through a real client scenario where I answered 3 questions I think are highly applicable for high earners looking to invest. We're going to cover how much you should be investing, how much you should spend, and exactly how much you need to set aside to retire on your terms. So let's start with step 1 of 3, figuring out where you should be actually putting your money. I recently started working with a new client who was earning around $500,000 a year at his business and was saving 6 figures every year in his corporation. We'll call him Joe. Joe's first question to me was, should he invest through an app like Wealthsimple or Robinhood? Should he walk into a bank and invest with them? Or should he work with someone like me? Now, here was Joe's problem. For years, he'd managed his own money, buying his favorite stocks and ETFs in his brokerage account. And when the market dropped 10%, it kind of barely stung, a few $1,000s on paper. But now he had money in his corporation, close to 7 figures sitting in cash. And he knew that every single day it wasn't invested, he was potentially losing a lot of money. And this is a common scenario. In fact, it's a top reason why millennials are starting to seek out wealth management. You start off by managing your own money using a self-directed or robo-advisor, build up a significant amount of savings, start to get a little more aware of how expensive mistakes get, and then start to seek out professional advice. Now back to Joe. He now had money to invest, a bit of experience managing his own money, and he wanted to know if he actually needed a financial advisor like me, or if perhaps he just needed a one-time advisement on his plan and a bit of encouragement that he's good to manage his own money, or if he should go to his bank that offered him a private wealth management service when his portfolio hit 7 figures. I told Joe that while not everyone needs a financial advisor, in my opinion, nobody needs a bank advisor for financial advice. And while good people definitely work at banks, I'm not trying to knock on the people at banks. Their entire ecosystem is built on extracting as much fees as possible from their clients to the benefit of their shareholders. The Canadian government-funded news division, CBC, did an investigation into banks' sales practices and found employees under intense pressure to hit sales targets, pushing credit cards, insurance, and mutual funds customers didn't need, and even giving misleading information about the fees they charge. So even if you get the good, qualified advisor, they will still be experiencing massive top-down pressure to monetize the relationship to its fullest extent, regardless of the client's best interest. So the next thing I showed Joe was this financial planning tree. It's basically a number of questions that you answer yes or no to, and it'll help you determine whether you need a financial advisor and wealth manager or just one-time financial advice. The first question I asked Joe was, could you actually withstand a market drawdown of 30% and not touch the money invested? Now, he was getting close to $1 million. That's $300,000 that'd be lost. Most people will have a hard time stomaching that type of drawdown. The second question is, do you have the hours and ongoing interest? One of the biggest reasons that people seek out financial advice is because they just don't have the time to learn everything they need to know to manage their own money. They may be very smart and actually fully capable of doing it if they had the time to learn, but many busy professionals, especially the people in like the top 1% to 2% of income earners, are so focused on their careers, they have little time to learn anything outside of that. The third question I asked Joe was, do you actually have the capabilities of building a diversified portfolio? So this has become a lot easier over the last number of years with one ticket ETF solutions like VEQT or XEQT, which in Canada are simply just one ticket ETF solutions that invest globally and are rebalanced frequently to make sure that you're like never out of balance in Canada, the US, or international stocks. But there still becomes the issue of the behavior gap or drawdowns, even if you do decide to go into those one ticker solutions. And I would argue that even though those are available, most people do choose to still buy single stocks or buy thematic ETFs or things like that, and then end up losing money in those when it inevitably doesn't go your way or the trends change. The fourth question that you have to consider in working with a financial advisor or not, is your financial situation simple? Like, we just have an RSP and TFSA, we're gonna max them out and live happily ever after. If that's the case, then you may not need a financial advisor aside from like a one-time plan just to let you know that you're on the right track. The fifth question is, have you priced a do-it-yourself mistake versus the cost of working with an advisor? Now, we see all the time those ads that say working with an advisor costs you 30% of your money. And the funny thing is, I kind of agree because there's a lot of bad financial advice out there. But the big thing it doesn't take into consideration is the mistakes that people make that they don't actually know they're making. The amount of times I've had people come to me and looked at their past investing history and seen withdrawals during market corrections, getting back in at market peaks. Everyone says, buy low, sell high, and everyone actually does the opposite. Or a big tax planning opportunity that they missed. The amount of business owners that didn't know the lifetime capital gains exemption was available to them and then just sold the assets of their business instead of the shares of their business, or they didn't have their corporation structure set up well. That's a huge mistake. And that's going to cost you well in excess of the fees you're going to pay a good financial advisor. And the last question to consider here is, will you actually execute the plan that's drawn up? So even if you're working with a one-off financial planner who does a plan for you and then it's up to you to implement, you still have to then go and execute. And that's where most plans fall apart. The easy part is running the numbers. The hard part is helping clients stick to the plan, especially as life changes. Now, most people cannot honestly say yes to all 6 of those. Either there's a knowledge gap, a behavior gap, or a time gap. And with Joe, he knew enough about investing to know that he could just implement a one decision portfolio, which would take care of number 3, but he didn't have the time and was honest with himself about past behaviors and the gap in knowledge that had led to poor investing outcomes in the past. He also lacked the time to sit down frequently to review his situation and needed help with someone he could trust. Joe pretty quickly understood that working with a financial advisor and having a plan drawn up was really valuable. He wanted to see firsthand what planning and tax advantages he was missing. Now, go back and screenshot the decision tree and let me know in the comments whether you can honestly say yes to all 6. If you can, DIY is probably fine. Step 2 of 3 of learning how to invest with a high income is actually learning how to spend or learning how to manage your spending. For some, when you're earning more and saving more, every dollar you spend isn't just a dollar anymore. Your brain starts doing the math. Like, if I drop $8,000 in this vacation, that's $8,000 that's not compounding for the next 20 to 30 years. And when you actually understand how compounding works, that number turns into something much bigger in your head. So spending actually starts to feel like you're stealing from your future self. And this is when I coach my clients on the importance of how they should spend money on themselves. For many people, spending money can be a problem in either direction, whether you're nervous to spend anything because one day it may be all gone, or whether your spending increases drastically as you make more money. These problems are caused by 2 primary behavioral issues. The first is a scarcity mindset, and the other is lifestyle creep. The reality is that you don't need to invest $1 more than is needed to accomplish your most important goals. I've also seen the opposite of this, where people think that the money will never stop, so they don't invest as much as they need to. But in Joe's example, he was a diligent saver and had trouble with the idea of spending money. And to help Joe understand how much money he could spend, I walked him through the goal-setting framework we use that is derived from psychologist Martin Seligman's PERMA well-being framework. We encourage people to write down as many goals as can come to mind, the reason why they have those goals, and then ask them to double the amount of goals they just wrote down. The PERMA model, backed by well-being research, identifies 5 key elements that drive a fulfilling life. We use it to make sure your goals touch each one, so every goal falls in at least one of the 5 categories. P is positive emotion. For example, building a $5,000 a year shopping fund to spend guilt-free on whatever I want to buy. E is engagement. Spend 2 hours a month learning a new skill or bettering myself for my current job or business. R is relationship. Have funds available to fully fund my kids' education and my 10-year anniversary trip. M is meaning. I want to give 5 or 10% of my income to my church every year. And then A is accomplishment. I want to compete in an Ironman. Now, you'll notice that not all those goals have to do directly with money or investing, but the framework here will help you determine how to spend your money and what you're investing for. Once we figure that out, we can ensure that we have an optimal investing strategy assigned and funding strategies in place to accomplish your most important goals, with the remainder left for you to spend guilt-free. Finally, step 3 of coaching Joe how to invest was helping him figure out how much money he actually needed to retire. There are 3 steps I walk my clients through to help coach them on retirement. The first step is defining what retirement means to them. The second is an age they'd like to retire, or as I like to put it, be financially free. And the third is working on an actual number you need to fulfill those goals. Let's start with retirement. First, I asked Joe what was retirement like for his parents. This can help you set an initial framework for things you've seen that you like or dislike about how previous generations have viewed retirement. Second, what is your current view on retirement? Social media has heavily influenced many generations' views on retirement. Is your idea based on social media or something you actually want? Which leads me to the final question. What does a day in the life of retirement look like to Joe? Most of the time when we map out a day in the life of a retiree for someone in their 30s and 40s, they can't find more than 3 to 4 hours of activities to fill in their day over an extended period of time. Joe's original thought was to race to retirement, retire early, but he failed to consider or think deeply on what he would actually do when he got there. And this problem isn't unique to Joe. About half my clients are under the age of 40, and most have brought up the idea of early retirement without defining what retirement really means. Early retirement sounds good, but in practice, it can be extremely challenging from a lifestyle perspective and a mental health perspective. Once Joe answered those 3 questions, I encouraged him to think about step 2 of 3, picking a financial independence age instead of a retirement age. This is defined as the age where if you had to shut it all down, you could live the life you wanted with no external income necessary. Once they define that age, we usually map out 2 to 3 paths to achieving it. There's high risk, high reward investments, which require lower savings rates, medium risk, medium reward investments, which require medium savings rates, and low risk, low reward investments, which require the highest savings rates as a percentage of income. When we show people that in order to hit your financial independence age, you may need to trade some lifestyle enjoyment pieces today, like travel or the country club, often they say, that's okay, let's push back my financial independence age. Why? Because life needs a balance of doing things you enjoy today while also being responsible and investing for the future. Defining the financial independence age is the most important thing you can do for your future self. It creates a flexible retire optional date with the trade-offs clearly defined and strategies clearly displayed. For Joe, we went through this exercise with him and he told me his financial independence age was 45. We showed him that he needed his investments to cover roughly $10,000 a month in lifestyle expenses in today's dollars in order to do that. Then finally in step 3, we mapped out a savings rate, which accounts he should save money to, and a portfolio return required where he could likely achieve that at age 45 and what complete retirement would look like then. We then ran the numbers at age 55 and found that if all he did was stay the course and not invest any more money, even from ages 45 to 55, he could spend the equivalent of $15,000 a month in today's dollars. Now keep in mind, I'm talking about spending, not gross income. There are all sorts of tax considerations at play, which is also why I'm not a fan of general rules like the 4% rule, because it doesn't take taxes into consideration. With our clients, we run something called a probability analysis, where we take the entire plan into consideration. We look at the risk of the investments, the guaranteed income sources, the pre-tax and post-tax value of each account, the required spend rates in retirement, and then calculate the probability of the investments hitting the after-tax required spending at any given age. This will deliver a much more accurate projection than the 4% rule will. Now, with that being said, this is something that needs constant updating because as soon as your life changes, your plan needs to adapt. If you plan on doing this yourself, the biggest takeaway I have as a financial planner is that you really study taxes or get advice on taxes, because saving for retirement is only half the battle. So look, whether you're a T4 employee or a business owner, learning to invest isn't some unreachable goal. Learning from trusted professionals can be all you need. But for higher incomes that require more advanced financial and tax planning, Learn the basics from the people you trust, arm yourself with the knowledge to not get taken advantage of, but make sure you have the right people in your corner to actually execute the planning and investments so that you can focus on the things that are actually meaningful in your life, like your family, your faith, your career, and your experiences in life that really matter.